If you want to replace your highly popular megastar character, do not put that character down to prop the replacement up. I was originally going to respond to complaints about Insomniac's confirmation about Miles becoming the main Spider-Man in their game's universe. The reaction that a not insignificant amount of fans had was negative, and that didn't make sense to me. The game clearly sets up that situation, so what's the issue? And this question popped into my head while I was writing my review. Link up top. Why exactly do so many people say that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and Miles Morales is Miles Morales? Are they stupid? It's right there in his comic book title. It's no different from Wally West as the Flash or Jon Stewart as Green Lantern. No one complained about Miguel O'Hara going by the exact same name as Peter either. I couldn't figure it out. I even started to buy into the only remaining theory I saw online, the big R, racism. They just didn't want to see a black character making such a meteoric rise to fame. And as I finished reviewing the story of the recent Spider-Man game, it hit me that it isn't racism. Well, not the majority of it. People just don't want Peter Parker to be replaced, or worse, replaced and disrespected. I don't recall this rhetoric becoming popular until 2018-ish. You know what happened in 2018? Into the Spider-Verse and Insomniac Spider-Man 1, both of which featured Miles Morales in a major capacity. The year prior, Homecoming was released, which laid out a cameo concerning Aaron Davis, Miles Morales' uncle and also the Prowler. This sets up Miles in the MCU by letting the audience know that he exists, at the very least. He also appeared in the cartoon Ultimate Spider-Man as a side character in Season 3 and then a recurring character in the next. Miles gets pushed just as much, if not more so, than Peter nowadays, and people don't like that. This is a feeling I understand well. As a small note about myself, because it's relevant to the situation, the first and second comic book runs I read to completion were both Spider-Man related back in 2013. The first was Ultimate Spider-Man, and second was the Superior Spider-Man. Both of these runs have something in common that I will bring up in a little bit. I picked up Ultimate because when I saw the cover on that rack full of floppies, I saw a dope design for a Spider-Man costume. And then I saw a black kid underneath. And I was furious. Livid, even. I thought they'd turn Peter Parker black for some reason and flip, since at this point the concept of a multiverse wasn't something I was aware of. So I picked the issue up and scanned through it quickly, only to find that Peter was dead. The kid on the cover was his successor, and it wasn't even a mainline universe. That anger was immediately replaced with curiosity. How did Peter die? What happened here? And that set me on the wonderful ride that is Ultimate Spider-Man. I later picked up the Superior Spider-Man run because I read on Wikipedia that Peter had also died in the mainline universe around the same time. Except no actual successor there. Instead, it was Doc Ock who had commandeered his body as a last-ditch scheme to defeat Peter. A scheme that clearly worked. Now, I thought Otto as the Superior Spider-Man was incredibly interesting, and it remains as one of my favorite comic runs, but there's a problem with it. A problem that both of these runs have. They both revolve around the death of Peter Parker, and were followed by someone for whom it was stated could be better at his job than he ever had been. Granted, Miles as a character never says this, but the side characters all push him as having the potential to be as good or better than his predecessor. A natural. And Otto's whole thing is that he wants to defeat Parker in every way. He is a villain after all, so that doesn't really matter in the story itself. But together, it could be read as a certain message. A message that tells people they should move on from the classic Spider-Man. The reason I bring this up is because 2013 is prior to the concept of woke, SJW propaganda, and other topics like those becoming mainstream. I didn't see many say Miles isn't Spider-Man back then, only that he was kind of bland. He wasn't different enough from Peter and didn't have unique villains, and this made him come off as a black Peter Parker, actually. Guess I wasn't too far off the mark when I first picked that issue up. But Miles had potential. This was the first completely separate character, meaning not a clone, to pick up the mantle of Spider-Man as a direct successor. That limited issue run of Spider-Man, where Peter from the 616 and Miles meet for the first time, was some of the most hype I have felt reading modern comics. If he could just get some of his own villains and relationships, then he'd be perfect. That aligned with the general sentiment I saw online as well. And then the Secret Wars happened. Miles was moved into the main universe, and Marvel has been unable to balance him and Peter existing side by side. The opinion you began to see from people at this point is that Miles worked better in a universe where his Peter was dead. That's what made his story compelling from the start, that Peter was his Uncle Ben in a way. Well, what about now? It got very, very confusing because the writers couldn't decide on what Miles remembered from the Ultimate Universe. Did he remember that his mother died? Did he remember he only put on the mask out of guilt for not helping the Ultimate Peter? Beats me. Once Miles is in the mainline universe, he begins to expand. He starts getting pushed in the media. His popularity continues to rise amongst the general population as the projects he's associated with are more often than not successful. Peter hasn't been lacking for appearances either. Just take one look at the response to No Way Home, but his comics version has gone through it. Lost his body, got it back. Got a Fortune 500 company, lost it. Got Mary Jane back, then got cucked. And now has no respect from the superhero community in universe, primarily thanks to a lot of out-of-character writing. The way the greatest Marvel character has been treated in the last 7 or so years has been nothing short of atrocious. If you count his deal with the devil, then you could technically go back 16 years. This is a guy that had characters from the future mention that Pete was considered the greatest hero of all time in only the mid-2000s. In fact, that's the biggest issue. Many feel as though Peter is not being given any respect, and writers are giving it all to Miles instead. We could take a look at the comics where Peter has become the definition of maidenless, whilst Miles can create an entire lightning bolt. I'm sorry, he can make swords? That's cool as fuck, but what does that have to do with spiders? Does he even need spider powers at this point? If he can make a lightning sword, perform lightning kamehamehas, and turn invisible, I think he could be a solo hero just based on his bioelectricity. So add that to the list, his power set is cooler than Peter's too. Sorry, I got sidetracked. If we take a look at Spider-Man 2, for instance, Peter is broken down all game until he reaches a final breaking point at the end and decides to take a break. This would be fine since this has happened several times before, but Miles is propped up as the perfect version of Spider-Man. And in the game, he kind of is. His friends and family know who he is, so he has a support system. He has a mentor. He doesn't have to work to pay the bills. His girlfriend is a deaf saint, checking 2 boxes there. And he even reforms his nemesis. Meanwhile, Peter just gets the crap kicked out of him for the entire game, both emotionally and physically. Like, here are some examples from the game only. 1. Miles fights and defeats symbiote Peter. So unlike the original Black Suit Saga, Peter does not come to the realization that he needs a Snickers on his own. His friend has to come in and save him, implying he isn't strong enough to do it by his own will. The guy whose most common trait is his willpower to get things done even when the chips are down. 2. Peter spends the entire fight against MJ's Scream taking a verbal lashing on his failures as a romantic partner. In addition to the general beating, which is really funny considering MJ signed up for that in the original game. Good thing she didn't mention anything about bed performance. I don't think Pete would have recovered. And I know that MJ in-universe wouldn't say those things if not affected by the symbiote, but it means that some part of her feels that way. Peter just takes it all. So to the audience, it really comes off as though he's guilty of everything she's saying, even though none of it was intentional on his part. Peter then spends most of the third act either saying, "I'm sorry," or "Harry!"
Hey, it's Harry. Leave a message.
This man called me Harry. Are you serious?
I talked to Dr. Connors. He says you're too far gone, but I know that's not true. Harry, I messed up. I was terrible to you. Your dream, our dream, healing the world. I'm sorry.
The thing is, he was all for that, and then he got stabbed and nearly died. It's the only reason he even took the symbiote in the first place.
Here.
Are you finally ready?
Harry.
Just another look at how Pete isn't good enough. Finally, there's the Venom battle. This one isn't so much talking as it is the fact that Peter fights Venom and gets knocked the hell out for a decent amount of time. Miles, on the other hand, performs way better. Like, it's actually kind of insane how much better Miles does. And to rub the salt in, after Peter has to make the sacrifice of taking Harry out in order to stop Venom, Miles resuscitates him. Jesus is back, everybody. In the story, it all makes sense, but it's not surprising at all that people feel like Miles is being unfairly pushed over the original. I'm of the opinion that if Peter gets to retire with MJ and have some kids, then Miles taking over is absolutely amazing. Kind of similar to how Spider-Man Life's story went, where Miles came around when Pete was old and had a full family already, so he was out of the game. It feels like Insomniac is sort of heading in that direction, which is why the ending where he focuses more on his science side didn't upset me too much. It is very iffy to do so while he's only 25 though. That's why I'm thinking Peter's definitely going to make a comeback to take on the Green Goblin. Of course, if they don't do this, then their whole trilogy is dog water. Brief interjection here, but it has come to my attention that this Norman is actually the most boring one we have gotten thus far. He's not insane or even a bad father. He's a guy that ran himself ragged trying to cure his son and failed. Originally, I figured that Norman was going to torture Miles and that would prompt Peter to put the tights back on, but I'm no longer seeing that realistically. Just one more gripe I have with the direction they took in Spider-Man 2. But to sum things up, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Miles Morales is Miles Morales, is a knee-jerk reaction people are having because they think their favorite hero is being replaced. It's a cry of rebellion. For them, Miles is simply a Spider-Man, whereas the powers that be are trying to make him the Spider-Man. And I think the issue really is that they're forcing Miles into that leading position by dumping on Peter. For comparison's sake, people were fine with Wally West becoming the Flash because Barry went out saving the entire multiverse. He also stayed dead for years, and that allowed Wally to form his own cast. They were not okay with Kyle Rayner becoming the sole Green Lantern because Hal Jordan became a supervillain to make that happen. Note, Hal became a villain in an out-of-character moment where he succumbs to trauma that he had already dealt with in a prior story. Respect versus disrespect. Another thing that could add to this is that both Miles and Kyle Rayner are unestablished characters that take the mantle after the originals are crapped on. That definitely wouldn't help ingratiate them to new audiences. This is why I think Into the Spider-Verse has the best version of Miles. Peter goes out a total hero, and the other version of him that shows up turns his life around thanks to Miles and has a kid. Just give my man Peter some kids, for God's sake. Are people right to feel this way about Miles? Let me know down below, but I'll end with this. With the way Peter has been written recently, I really can't blame these people for wholesale rejecting his so-called replacement. Thanks for listening. Stay blessed.